Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
Continue our Packers training camp storyline preview series. We've touched on different storylines. What I believe are the top storylines for the Green and Gold heading into training camp and preseason now that we are less than 2 weeks away from the first practice of training camp. And today I want to talk about the corners. You know, we've talked about the offensive line. We've talked about the defensive line and the wide receivers. The corners are definitely a very intriguing, kind of an unknown group, if you will. Like, we know the guys, but like, all right, can these guys get the job done? I think that's the main question. That's the main question I have, at least, when it comes to these guys. You know, you got Keyshawn Nixon as your number one. Hobbs coming in, your free agent signing. Some talk about, is he a better slot guy? There's some injury concern throughout his young career. And then Carrington Valentine entering his third year. Now, you look at some of these guys, and yes, some of the advanced numbers or analytics, if you will, like Pro Football Focus, there's a lot of things to like about them. But do they pass the eye test for a lot of you when you look at this? And then you look at, okay, the depth after that. If you want to throw Javon Bullard in there too as, you know, a nickel back, Packers do, it's on the depth chart. That's fair too. So I'll admit it, I don't know what to really expect from this group. I mean, we saw a little bit of it from Keyshawn Nixon last year, and honestly, we saw quite a bit of Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine as your top two corners because of the injuries to Jair Alexander, and then, you know, Eric Stokes not really getting on the field. So we got a little bit of a sample size from it last year. So I guess my expectation on one hand would be, okay, since we got to see these two guys, if we talk about these two guys as being, you know, maybe your top two of the three easily, can we see a little bit more improvement, growth heading into this year, especially maybe from a Carrington Valentine on the younger side of his career entering year three? And to me, the big question is Keyshawn Nixon a number one corner? He wants to be a number one corner. He believes he could be a number one corner, but can he be a number one corner? The issue or the concerns that I have are, okay, look at the division alone. Can Keyshawn hang with a Justin Jefferson? Can Keyshawn hang with an Amon-Ra St. Brown? With a Rome Odunze? With a Jameson Williams? You know, can the corners go up against those top-tier wide receivers? And you look at the schedule this year, this cornerback group is going to be tested. You got the Bengals with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on your schedule. You've got, you throw in the Ravens with some of their guys over there, like a Rashad Bateman. All right. You throw in the Commanders with Terry McLaurin and now Deebo Samuel. You throw in the Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb and Pickens. You throw in the Steelers with DK Metcalf. You throw in the Eagles, for crying out loud. Giants. Right? I mean, so they're going to be going up against teams that have really good wide receivers. They're going to be tested. And we're going to find out this year if this is a group, a trio, if you will, that can hold down the fort, that can get the job done. Because if they can't, I think we know instantly what a number one priority is going to be next offseason for the Packers. This was an offseason that was full of, is Jair staying? Is Jair going? He's gone. And you look at the draft, they didn't spend a high pick on a corner. They brought in Hobbs as a free agent. But for a lot of Packers fans, maybe a little bit unknown, you read stuff, you watch some stuff about him, you hear other people talk about him, and there's a lot of things to like. A lot of Raiders fans liked him. Just the biggest concern surrounding him was, can the guy stay healthy? He's a good tackler, but there's some people who believe that he is a better nickel corner. Packers sound like they're going to give him a chance to play on the outside, though, at times too. So are we going to see that position versatility? Or is it strictly going to be Keyshawn and Carrington are going to be lined up on the outside because that's how they are in a depth chart, and Nate Hobbs is strictly going to be a nickel corner? And then you talk about the depth after that. A Kamal Hayden, a Micah Robinson, we mentioned Javon Bullard, Kalen King, not Omar Brown, but Isaiah Dunn. There's questions. There's question marks surrounding the depth. I understand. There's a ton of Packers fans excited about Kalen King. I was excited last year about Kalen King too. Kalen King was my preseason dude to every year I pick that preseason player that's like a 7th round pick or a really late pick or an undrafted rookie free agent that's going to make the team and maybe surprise some people. Kalen King was my guy last year. And we didn't see him a ton, right? I mean, he spent a ton of his time on the practice squad. So we didn't get to see him a ton. He's an unknown. I would imagine he's going to make the roster this year. We'll see in preseason training camp. But there's a ton of Packers fans expecting, like, hey, watch out for Kalen King this year. I'm excited to see him too, and I'm excited to see him get more of an opportunity this year. But the reality is that we still don't know a whole lot about him. And we don't know if he's going to be able to play at a high level. Packers have had a history of finding late corners and getting something out of those guys. Sam Shields being a prime example of that. A 7th-round pick, rookie year, part of the Super Bowl team. Was the kind of the nickel corner at that time with Tremont and Woodson on the outside. Carrington Valentine was also 7th-round pick or maybe 6th round. Regardless, very late. Tremont Williams wasn't drafted by the Packers, but he was an undrafted rookie free agent, Texans, and spent a little time there, minicamp, and Packers bring him in. And he developed into a great corner for the Packers. So they have a little bit of a history with that. This is a different staff, though, right? I mean, let's be real. It's a different staff. But this is definitely, when I look at preseason and training camp, I look at certain position groups. I look at certain battles. Offensive line, to me, is a big one. Just to kind of see, we know our locks and we know our starters. But there's a lot of, you got the Elton Jenkins that's switching positions. Aaron Banks with the major contract that a lot of people feel like Packers overspent. So how is he going to look? And, you got then the depth questions after that. You got the Jordan Morgan battle. Is he going to be able to crack the starting lineup? I'm looking at the corners. Offensive line to me is definitely a group that I'm paying attention to this year to see how it all plays out. And then the depth after that. Corners right there too with them. Because I want to see a lot of these guys behind Hobbs, Valentine, and Nixon. Who are the other guys that are going to fill out the back end of that depth chart? Because when you talk about corners, you're talking about maybe carrying 6 or 7 of those guys. And you get a little bit of a position versatility with Javon Bullard playing safety. You can we can keep him at safety, but he also plays a nickel. So you have a little bit of that versatility, but I'm really looking at it from the back end this preseason, this training camp, I really want to see more Kalen King. I want to see him get a ton of opportunities. I want to see him get a ton of reps. Because his number may be called upon this year if there's an injury. We're one injury away from one of those top 3 guys to where one of these younger dudes that we may not know anything about or never seen before, where their number's called up. We're one injury away from being a little shaky potentially in the corner department. But even with the top 3, there is still some unknowns about them. Keyshawn, I think, played well last year in an expanded role at the cornerback position. I think that kind of gets a little overlooked at times. He did play well. But can he be counted on for 17 games as being like that number 1 corner? Can he match up with a Justin Jefferson, play in and play out? A Jamar Chase for a game, play in and play out? What about Carrington Valentine? Can he take his game up another level? And then Can Hobbs stay healthy? Can he play a full season? And can he play up to that contract that he got this offseason from Green Bay? There's some unknowns. There's some question marks. I think there's potential. There's definitely opportunity for these guys. And I hope they blow the doors off this thing. And I hope they surprise a ton of people. But when you look at this team and you look at, okay, the depth at certain positions, corner's probably up there in terms of like, I'm a little bit nervous. But that's where I think when it comes to preseason, we're probably not going to see the top three like a Hobbs or a Nixon and Valentine in the preseason games. But when we get to the training camp practices, the thing to pay attention to for those guys are going to be when they're matched up with the Jaden Reeds, with the Matthew Goldens, with the Romeo Dobbs. Those are the battles where they're going to get better. It's not going to be the preseason games. Pay attention to those plays when they're matched up against their teammates and how they're doing. And remember, Jeff Hafley wants to drop extra guys in coverage. So maybe that'll help them out in that department too. But if they can't get home with the pass rush, that's really going to put more pressure on those corners to be able to cover man versus man.